I'll do a short demonstration on adding devices to the IoT One Cloud platform. We're going to start with a breadboard connected to a Raspberry Pi. However, it's not plugged in. We're going to start by plugging in a few devices. The first device we're going to use is a DS1820. This is a temperature sensor in a transistor package. And one of the first things we have to do is connect a 4.7 kilo ohm resistor across pins number 2 and 3. That gives some voltage to the data pickup so we can actually get some information from it. Once that's done, the first thing we should do is connect a ground wire from pin 1 to ground on the board. This is important if there's any errant voltage somewhere that it's not going to damage the component and has somewhere to ground any voltage out. Once that's done, we can take another wire and connect the center pin, pin number 2, to the data port for one-wire devices, and that's going to be pin number 4 on our BCM board. Once that's done, the last thing we need to do is connect a pin number 3 to voltage. In this case, we're going to use the 5.5 volt, although this device can use 3.3, so either side isn't terribly important. But make sure that you connect it directly to the 5.5 pin on the board. The next sensor we're going to add is the BMP280 ambient pressure sensor. This uses the I2C protocol, so to connect this we'll need to use 2 wires. First we'll need to connect the ground wire to a grounding point on the breakout board. And then I'm using 2 different color wires between SDA and SCL, which are pins 3 and 5 respectively, both on the Pi and the breakout board. It can be handy to use different color wires to just analyze your circuits and figure out what's being plugged into where. This board again can use either 5.5 or 3.3 volts. In this case, we're going to connect it from VCC to a direct 3.3 volt connection. Lastly, we'll be taking an LED and plugging that in directly to ground and one of the pins on the board. Be sure that you have the right orientation. The longer pin should be where the board is, and the shorter pin should be where ground is. Now that that's finished, we can plug in the Raspberry Pi, power it up, and make sure that both the IoT Hub and IoT Framework are running. Once we're sure that both are running on the computer, and there's a couple ways that we can do that. Refer to the documentation for steps on how to set those up. Once that's up and running, we can now take our iPhone and start adding devices. This phone is already pre-configured to connect to the hub, so once it's connected we can start adding devices. The flow is the same for adding any device. Select the host, then select the device type, and in some cases we'll need to select a specific item, and after that we can go ahead, configure it, and then add. The one-wire device will take a few moments to start sending data. So while we're waiting for that, let's add our second device, which will be the pressure sensor. To look up what your device address will be, refer to the documentation for I2C devices, how to find out what the device address and bus are. In this case, it's address 77. We're not going to rename it anything fancy, we're just going to hit save. Now again, we're starting to wait for a little data, so while we're doing that again, we're going to add one more device, which will be the LED. Be sure to note that we're using the wiring Pi numbering for this one. Please refer to the documentation for matching up BCM, wiring Pi, and GPIO pins. Once we've added this, we can now control the LED with a tap. The rest of the information is now displayed on the iPhone, and you are now using your devices to the Internet of Things.